Hello, I'm continuing my reviews on the Ghoulies series with Ghoulies IV. Now, Ghoulies IV, of course, is the fourth film in the Ghoulies series. Now, this came out in 1994 and was released straight to video when it came out. Now, in my opinion, Ghoulies IV is the worst of the Ghoulies franchise, in my opinion. If you like this movie, that's cool, but I was not a fan of this one. And truthfully, I thought this film had a lot of potential, because this one actually does try to tie in with the first one, because the character of Jonathan Graves, who was the main character of the first movie, he comes back in this movie, which I actually thought was cool, that they were actually trying to tie this one in with the first one, but the movie kind of just falls flat on its face. Like, they retcon certain things, which I hate when they do that. Like, retconning only works in very rare occasions, in my opinion. And also, for a movie called Ghoulies IV, there's only two ghoulies in the movie, and basically their role in this movie pretty much becomes more of a subplot than anything else. And also, the ghoulies in this movie are the good guys. Like, the ghoulies are actually not evil in this movie, which could have worked. Like, they could have made that actually work, like having the ghoulies be the good guys this time around. The problem is, it really doesn't work. I mean, don't get me wrong, the two ghoulies that show up in this movie, like, they're funny, they're entertaining, and they're kind of cute too, but there's nothing. Once again, their role in this movie is almost like a subplot. Like, they barely interact with the main characters of the movie. They barely interact with, like, the Jonathan Graves character, and there are points where they try to, but, like, once again, the ghoulies in this movie, for a movie called Ghoulies IV, their role in the movie really is just a subplot. Now, the plot of Ghoulies IV is it begins where this woman named Alexandria, who you find out later on is actually an escaped mental patient, she worships this demonic entity who she calls Faust, and in the beginning of the movie you see her sacrifice these cops to Faust, and she's trying to give Faust this ruby which would allow him to come forth into our world, and somewhere along the way, she ends up summoning two little demons, who of course are the ghoulies in this movie, and once again, the ghoulies in this movie actually aren't evil. Throughout the film, they're just trying to get home. The movie also follows the character of Jonathan Graves, who was the main character of the first movie, but in this movie, he's now a police officer, and he starts to realize what's actually going on, and he's the one who has to stop Alexandria. Now, Ghoulies IV, I personally thought was a pretty bad movie. Now, I really didn't hate this movie per se, but there were a lot of things about this movie that really kind of bugged me. Now, the acting in the movie is pretty bad. I'm not saying the first three movies had, like, Oscar-caliber acting either, but I don't know, for some reason the acting in this really came off as pretty bad, while in the first three movies, it was more just cheesy acting, and the actors in this movie, they definitely know what kind of movie they're in, but most of the acting in this film is actually pretty bad, with the exception of the guy who plays the main character, Jonathan Graves, who is the same actor from the first movie. He actually does do a pretty decent job, and the actress who plays Alexandria, who I think this actress was also on One Tree Hill, she actually does do a pretty decent job in this movie as well. I mean, the acting, it is cheesy, but something tells me it was kind of meant to be cheesy, because once again, it is a cheesy movie. But once again, besides them, most of the acting in this film is pretty bad, but another thing that really bugged me about this movie is just how it ties into the first one, but at the same time it seems to retcon on a lot of things, which really annoys me. Like, in the movie, you find out that Jonathan Graves actually dated Alexandria years before the events of this movie, and he was the one who got her into all this satanic stuff, and basically it was his fault that she kind of went crazy, but I'm just thinking, like, what, did he, like, meet her, like, after the events of the first movie? And it's like, after the events of the first movie, why would you mess with that stuff again? And they also don't mention the character of Rebecca, who was Jonathan's girlfriend or fiancé in the first movie. They don't mention her at all in this movie, and you could assume maybe she left him between the events of the first movie and when he met Alexandria, but at the same time, though, they should have at least given that character a mention, so it's almost like they're retconning certain things, which, me being kind of a continuity nerd, really kind of annoys me. Now, personally, what I think they should have done was, I think they should have made the character of Alexandria from this movie the character of Rebecca from the first movie. That, I think, would have had a lot more emotional impact, where you had this character who we've grown to care about in the first movie become the villain of this movie. To me, that would have had a lot more emotional impact and would have been a lot more of a gut punch, and something tells me that maybe that's what they tried to do, but maybe they couldn't get the actress who played Rebecca from the first movie, so they decided to just have it be a different character. But once again, I mean, even if they couldn't get the same actress, they should have had it still be the same character. Like, really, the character of Alexandria, she seems to come out of nowhere, and once again, one of the few things I like about this movie is that it is trying to tie in with the first one, but it's not even tying in with the first one properly. And once again, the ghoulies in this movie are not even evil, and that could have worked. That could have actually worked, but they could have had the ghoulies, like, help out the main character a little bit more, which they really don't. As I said before, the ghoulies in this movie are almost more of a subplot than anything else, and the movie's called Ghoulies IV. So, I'm personally not a fan of Ghoulies IV, but if you like the movie, that's cool. Maybe you saw something in the movie that I didn't, or this movie did something for you that it didn't do me, and once again, if you like it, that's fine. I'm just personally not a fan, but I am a fan of the first 3 Ghoulies movies, and I do recommend checking out the first 3 films, but once again, that's my review on Ghoulies 4, and now that I'm done reviewing the Ghoulies franchise, the next horror franchise I'm going to review is actually the Predator franchise, which I know is completely different from the Ghoulies series, and also it is somewhat debatable whether Predator is actually horror or not. I personally consider it to be both sci-fi and horror and action, but I do consider it to be horror, so my next movie review will be Predator.